You're now tuned into the Real Rap Radio Show. I'm your host, Walil Archer on Downtown Hot Radio. I have a special guest with me. I have author Dr. Jerry Burton. How are you today?
Doing quite well, thank you. How are you, Walil?
I'm doing awesome. Super excited to have you today as a guest on my show.
Well, thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
And let's talk about your book that you have.
Okay. Um, the title of it is Get a Grip on the Bible. It's kind of an active title, get a grip on that Bible. And the reason I wrote it was to help people understand the Bible and enjoy reading it. I have a men's Bible group that I actually have several, but in the major group I have, uh, they've been with me a long time. But I asked them several years ago, um, how often they read the Bible, um, and outside of my study guide group, um, and and had anybody ever read the Bible all the way through that was in the group? And one guy raised his hand, and he said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Well, that's great. How are you able to do that?" And he said, "Well, the method I used was front to back, and it was a terrible experience. And the reason I had the time was I was in prison for those 3 years, and I." That was several years ago, and every morning I meet him for breakfast. Every Saturday morning I meet him for breakfast, and I buy him breakfast just because he really is such a great guy and a good Christian and a good heart. But I asked the others. I said, "Well, I admitted that I've read the Bible all the way through several times, but the time that I read it front to back was an awful experience because it just is not written like we're used to." My wife, who is a brilliant and beautiful woman, and I love her, and she's such a compliment to me in the work that I do. She uh, she has a degree. She has a doctorate degree in intercultural medical communication. See, I have to slow down to even say it because she's a lot smarter than I am. I can't say her title, but she uh, she pointed out to me that we are what is called Homo narrans. Homo being human, narrans meaning narrative. We think and act in terms of a beginning, a middle, and an end. Bible doesn't always talk that way. And it certainly is not necessarily organized that way. Close, but not quite. And so it's not the natural kind of writing that we like to read. But if you understand the nature of the differences in the Bible, the fact that you have to not only look at the words, you have to interpret and I don't mean interpreting the Bible now, but look at what they've said and take the action words and try to envision the actions and the descriptions in the customs of the time in which they were written. We tend to read the Bible and apply it to ourselves in our context. And that's not the way it was written. It was written for other people. I shouldn't say for, it was given to other people at other times with different customs. But it was written for us because God authored it. So it's written for us. We just have to be cognitive or aware of the fact that it's written within a custom or a culture framework. And when you understand that, and my book goes through that, I give cultural information in this book. We go just Genesis through Ruth, uh, because since I'm teaching a method, I don't need to cover every book of the Bible. I'll do that in my next book. But this just is the first part of the Bible, the part that people generally do not like to read. You got the Pentateuch, which is law, history and law. People find it boring. It's really very exciting. And you can tie the stories together if you understand the culture. So that's the type of thing that I try to focus on, is educating the reader in a reading technique and adding cultural and technical literary information to the words in the Bible so that you better understand how they applied in that culture and how we should apply it then in our culture.
Now, how did you come up with that title?
Uh, I think God must have given it to me, because it was in that same night when I asked them, well, why haven't you read the Bible? And of course, they all said, well, first of all, it's that thick and the words are only that large. The letters are only that large. And it reads like it was written in a different language. Well, all of that's true. It is that big, letters are that small, and it was written in a different language, which is my whole point in what I'm doing. And so I realized they had valid reasons to be unhappy or not quick to pick up the Bible. Certainly, they didn't read it for relaxation. So I just all of a sudden I said, "Well, we need to get a grip. You need to get a grip on the Bible." And immediately I knew that was going to be the title of the book, because it is a very forceful, active phrase. Get a grip. How many times have you heard "get a grip"? And it's always
Mhm.
in a situation where somebody needs to listen to what it is you're saying.
And how long did it take you to write the book?
I spent, I was writing two books at the same time. Um, one for a friend about his life in the military in World War II. And so it took 3.5 years to write the two books together. But of that 3.5 years, 2 years was spent on his book. So it took me about a year and a half. I had already done a tremendous amount of the research for the book, because I research every day, and I use a scientific method. I challenge everything that I read. And I learned that from my science background. Uh, you don't just read something and accept it. You read it and you challenge it, and you say, okay, what is what applies to what I just read, and does that make sense? So I use a scientific method in writing this book and all my books, and um, that it was based on years and years and years of reading the Bible as a child, all the way up to adult.
Now, what do you want the readers to take away from reading this book?
Smile on their face, for
Mhm.
one thing. I'd like them to feel fulfilled, but what I really, really, as an end goal, want for them is to embrace and embody stories in the Bible. My mom, I think I mentioned to you earlier that she was a professional storyteller, had her own radio program, and she would practice her stories on me before she would tell them on the radio. And I had come to her one day in grade school. I had read Huckleberry Finn, and she said, "That's great. Tell me about it. Tell me the story." Now, what I'm telling you right now is actually the format of the book. You read the story, and then you read, uh, uh, well, you read the background, and then you read the story, and then you tell the story. So that's kind of the format. Um, and so I told her, and she said, "Well, that's great. That's great, but you've really got that story down if you're Huckleberry Finn. But what if you're the ant? What if you're Jim? What if you're the girl? What if you're somebody else? She said, go back and read the book. And this time, as you read, be another character in the book. And I did that. I came back afterward and I told her the story from that standpoint. She said, well, go read it a third time. Now I was getting a little tired of Huckleberry Finn, but I did. I may have cheated a little bit on that third time, but I was able to tell her the story. And what I realized was the story I told the third time was not the story I told first or the second time. It was a more full, robust, complete story in feel, in textual knowledge, in the words. It had become part of me. I could tell that story 5 years after that. I could tell that story. Well, maybe not now because it's been a lot more than 5 years. But by the time I was in high school and college, I could tell that story without looking at it again because I had embodied it. And that's what we need to do with Scripture. God's word was meant to be applied. So the way to embody it is to sing it in a song. How easy is it for you to hear a song, you really like the song, next thing you know, you're singing along with it and you're humming it and you know all the words to it and you didn't even try. Mm-hmm. But you can remember that song. Now, you may not be able to remember a short newspaper article that you had read earlier, but you remember the song. And so that is embodying. And the idea is not to be able to retell the stories completely. It's to know the stories and put it into your life so that it affects your life.
Understood. With this book, how many pages or chapters would you say the book is?
There are 8 chapters. It goes from Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then Joshua, Judges, and that's it. Ruth, yeah. And so basically it goes from the creation through these 8 books. And it doesn't cover everything that's in each of those books of the Bible. It covers the stories that people are most likely to be interested in and therefore to remember. And so the reader will go through it and they'll read a story. And I usually have like maybe 4 stories out of each chapter for each book of the Bible, which would be a chapter. So you read the 4 stories, but in the process, you're asked to memorize some. And I don't like the word memorize. It's really read it, learn it, retell it. Retell it to yourself when you're alone. Retell it to yourself in front of a mirror. Retell it then to your spouse. They'll be your toughest critic. And so, that is called storyizing. And what I want to do is storyize eventually the entire Bible. Second volume I'm reading really gets into the science and scripture and culture and it's a heavier book. It would be tough to read without reading the first one. But with this first one, the reader should feel very, very comfortable with the first 8 books of the Bible. You learn things in this book that there are some things you would not get out of reading the book by yourself or the Bible by yourself. You can read the book, and I bring in other stories that affect this story over here that you're reading. And that's hard to do in the Bible. I mean, I spend 30, 40 hours a week reading and studying and analyzing just the Bible. So basically, I have done a lot of work for the reader so that they can see where this story fits with this story and how this character influenced this character and how time goes on and those things live on, those stories live on and are repeated or have an effect on what else happens in the Bible. So I think it's a pretty unique approach, but I truly, totally dedicated myself to the writing when I was writing it, which is why I took an hour, a year and a half just on this book. And I already had a very strong background in the Bible, and I've taken Hebrew. My wife is the Greek expert, but I'm the Hebrew guy. So it's I try to everything I learn, I like to give to other people. And this book is is certainly an example of that. When you pick it up, come through it and read it, you say, wow, this is a lot of good information that's presented in an easy way to remember and understand, and it makes sense. And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Did you self-publish the book?
Uh, Not originally, but I am self-publishing it now, and I'm glad you brought that up because Atticus is the publishing company. So I actually go through Atticus and use their printer, and they have helped me tremendously. Stephen Ford and Logan Crawford are the two primary people there. And as a quote self-publishing company, I mean I've been hit on by probably 80 or 90 people wanting to publish, and I just did not find them credible. But Atticus, they they are absolutely head and shoulders above everybody else. You can talk with them, you can negotiate with them, and they are very encouraging. They really think about me, not just my book. Um, so it's yeah. So they have helped me set up myself as quote self publishing.
Nice. And let's talk about
Oh yeah,
let's talk about your background with your education. You have a great background in education.
yes. The education background. I went through grade school, and I was going to be a railroad engineer. Well, then the science boom hit, and so by the time I got into high school, I had a high interest in physics and chemistry and biology, and because God has given me this this urge to share. I mean, it's compulsive. If you sat down with me, I would be trying to tell you everything, not because I'm important, but what I have learned, I think is important and can be important to other people. So I, of course, got my high school education. Then I went away to college and uh, enjoyed the college and got a degree in geology and did some geology work. I live out in New Mexico now, and that you
Mhm.
you walk outside the house and you're into some kind of geology that's interesting. So and I give field trips still, and I talk in schools to tell them about some of the science. For example, I'm going to go into a small school that really can't afford a lot of teachers. They're a good school, but I'm going to go in and just give a lecture on geology and chemistry, and probably not physics because it'll be the younger kids. But one of the things I'm going to show them is that uh, water molecules are polar. They have a positive end and a negative end. And you can take a glass, and I always have a glass that's you can see through, transparent, and we fill it up almost to the top. Then we take a dropper, like an eyedropper, and we start putting water in it. So if this is the level of the top of the glass, you'll pretty soon see the water up here outside of the glass. So you have more than filled the glass with water because of the polarity of the atoms and the molecules that make up water. Molecules are clinging onto each other, and it's always great for me to do that because I look at them and see their faces and their eyes get big, and of course then they go home and try to show their parents and they get the kitchen table all wet, but if they do it wrong. But that's that. I have a master's in science teaching, which covers math, physics, chemistry, biology, and astronomy. And that is from New Mexico Tech, which is one of the 9 top um, scientific development schools. They do a lot of development work in science. They're close to Sandia Labs here in Albuquerque, and so New Mexico Tech was heavily involved with the nuclear development of the nuclear bomb and a bunch of things beyond that. So it's a good science area. The school is just really great to go through. Everybody is so well qualified, and they're real people. So New Mexico Tech is a big part, but they are very high tech. A lot of experimental stuff goes on there.
And as we close out, can you let everybody know where they can purchase the book and where they can find you on social media?
Yes, on social media they can buy it through my website, and my social media or my web page is Jerry L. Burton, no spaces, just JERRYLBURTON.com, and that'll get my web page. It's got some of the videos I've done, both on the military book that I wrote for my friend, as well as Get a Grip on the Bible. It has a lot about my background. But the easiest thing for somebody who wants to purchase the book is to just go through Amazon. I don't make as much money that way, but I don't care about making the money. God has blessed me beyond my dreams. So it's really everything I'm doing is for the person. So it's easiest for them to go through Amazon, and it'll come up. It was a #1 bestseller.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people who have bought it. I get good feedback on it, and I just pray that everybody who picks it up considers it a great blessing in their life.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Jerry, I'd like to thank you for doing the interview today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So that's my time today on the Real Rap Radio Show. And I'll see you guys next time on Downtown Hott Radio with Walil Archer. Thanks, everyone.